All right, good morning and welcome to the Northwest Event Show. You're in the event experience track, so if you're expecting to be in that room, awesome. If you're not expecting to be in this room, please stay because it's going to be an amazing presentation from Adrena Trice, who is a marketing and visionary. She began her career in communications and segued into production. Launched her company 111 PR Agency, which is now 111 Productions. She is a multi-dimensional and universal visionary and producer. We're so excited to have her here. And, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Kat Uzel with PRA Events, and I'm just a member of the Seattle event community and wanted to be a participant in this exciting two-day conference. So welcome. And I'm now going to welcome Adrena up on the stage. A lot of what we're doing today is a conversation. So don't be afraid. Raise your hand. I'll bring a mic over. I think this one will probably be the one. And here we go.
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, my mic is on. Awesome. How's everyone doing today? Awesome. So, my name is Adrena Trice. I'm the founder and director of 111 Agency. Today, we're going to have a little fun. I want to get to know you, and I want you to get to know me. And we're going to talk about how we're going to move from events to experiences. Just a brief walkthrough. So, thank you to our sponsors, by the way, Stuart Butler. Thank you for the opportunity. So let's get to know each other. So I have a question. What's an ideal experience for you? Anyone? Raise your hand. Oh, the mic.
Where was my hand? Well, right there in the front.
I said an ideal experience would be an experience that touches on all five bases of the human, lifestyle. So like hearing, touch, what else? Like taste, like just basically all five. So
That's a great answer. Anyone else?
I guess just like leaving feeling motivated and excited about the experience I had.
Awesome. That's a great answer as well. So let me ask, what was the last memorable, breathtaking event that you attended? Just thinking back, post-pandemic. Anyone? Again?
the last memorable event I went to was the Bill Gates Breakthrough Energy Summit, which was really good because I think, like what I said earlier, that makes an ideal experience. It touched on all five bases of it. So,
And FYI, I produced that event, so thank you for attending.
great. Thanks for having me.
And, you said that your key takeaway was the entire experience. So technically, an event, this is the Webster Dictionary. Oh, go ahead. So sorry.
Thank you. My name is Kai, and it was the Northwest Wall and Ceiling Bureau Wall and Ceilings Conference in Scottsdale. They had such an amazing mix of education and social events and the laid-back networking. I was there as a vendor, but just as an attendee, it would have been so awesome.
And what was the experience as a vendor? Because that's interesting versus an attendee and a vendor. Were you able to mix and mingle and network with other vendors as well?
Oh, to clarify, we were the video producers,
Okay.
so we were always hanging out in the back watching the really awesome education.
Awesome. Thank you for your answer. Is there anyone else? So the basic definition of events and experiences is, of course, a planned public or social occasion, typically curated from a setting of choice, and an experience is similar what to the guy in the front, didn't catch your name, the fact or state of having been affected or gaining knowledge. So a big takeaway from the entire participation observation moment. So it's been quite an experience for me. I learned over the years that every event is not an experience, and every experience does not have to be an event. I never gave much thought how concerts, fireside conversations, sports outings are all considered events. I approach every opportunity as, by the end of my experience, what is the biggest takeaway? What am I receiving? Whom am I connecting with? And how does this align and elevate with my personal experience? And each event that I attended prior to aligning with experiences began to become the same. I felt like there was a disconnect. Like, I was attending events and it wasn't a big takeaway for me. I felt that it wasn't an immediate connection, so what was the problem? You arrive, it's refreshments, it's mix and mingle, it's the production, and then it's the end. But it wasn't nothing more to that. And that's where my sense of the loss of connection came from. My experience started at CBS Radio. I went to DePaul in Chicago. I'm a Chicago girl. I'm from the South Side. And we had multiple experiences in Chicago. It's actually a great city to food, of course. I'm really big on that. And see me after for recommendations as well. But starting living in Chicago, growing up in Chicago, there were many experiences that I have encountered. One takeaway, one memorable experience for me is definitely downtown, as I mentioned, food, attractions, and things of that nature. And it kind of like followed along with me as I began my journey. Immediately after graduating from college, I took a job on to CBS Radio, working in sales and advertising. And for me, I started out as like, okay, sales, you're securing these accounts, and then it ventured off to, all right, we want you to curate events. And I said, okay, this is fun, cool. The events, it was like for sports, the Cubs, and they were like, you're doing an amazing job. Let's transfer you to New York, and you work with the Yankees. And for me, that was the start of events and just learning the ins and outs about it. From 2013 to 2016, I took on an internship working at Sony Music and Sony Pictures, ended up in LA. From 2017 to 2019, I was lucky enough, 2 weeks, bought a one-way ticket, went to LA, and I started working with Issa Rae, Insecure, working as a junior publicist. Being in LA was a complete different experience from being in Chicago. It was like I hit the ground running and was able to meet so many great people, and it literally went from south side of Chicago, working a corporate job, to running the red carpets and events. So my first event was the Grammys. Actually attended with Issa Rae, walking her down the red carpet. 7 months later, I felt like I got the experience, the connections, and I went off and started 111 PR Agency, where I started as a publicist, and my first clients, they were entertainment and sports, and then we have ventured off definitely present day, which we would get into. And then from 111 Agency, I did take a break because I wanted to get more into corporate events again, and I worked at Dave & Buster's. Are you guys familiar with Dave & Buster's? Of course you are. So, of course, me joining Dave & Buster's, I felt that, oh, I'm gonna be doing birthday events. I have much more experience than that. But no, it was completely different. These events it was an opportunity for me to establish myself where I can build with companies such as Hulu, you had Facebook, you had YouTube. It's in an area where they wanna call it Silicon Beach in LA. And what I did was go door to door, and I was asking, what are experiences? What can your team, how could your team bond, and what could be some takeaways? How can we curate experiences for you? So what we did at Dave & Buster's, we implemented bringing everyone together. Instead of the typical team building activity, we did something a little bit different and elevated. And from there, I went off to the Riveter, which is the founder, Amy Riveter, Amy Nelson, she's actually from Seattle. And it was a co-working space, female-owned, all women, so that was an amazing experience. And keyword experience, that's where I learned a lot in regards to curating more of a 200 base, 500 people type of experiences. You had people from different walks of life come in and ask, like, how can we elevate this? How can we take things to the next level? And I was definitely able to deliver that expertise. I feel that the height of 2019 was the co-working spaces, and then unfortunately, the pandemic hit. In 2020, of course, we already know what happened there. I don't want to bring up that nightmare, but we're going to dive into it because that's a part of the journey. 111, we picked back up. Actually, 2 weeks before they announced the pandemic was going to end, we stated like, okay, well, we wanted to pick back up. And actually, it was a quick transition from us to go from actually producing events and PR-related things to actually virtual events. How many of you have taken Zoom calls over the pandemic? Everyone should raise their hand, honestly. And how many of you had issues with the virtual experience? Everyone should raise their hand. However, it was a way for us to stay connected because we were so locked in and away from each other. So it was an experience, to say the least. However, we definitely have moved forward from that, which we will get into later. In present day 111, we're transitioned fully from a PR agency to a full-on production where we do things with many companies, Disney, Hulu, to name the least, and Woodford Reserve, all of these accounts. So how can we elevate and move forward from events to experiences? What is the problem and solution for elevated experiences? That's one thing that we will walk away from today, and I want you to have, at the end of this conversation, to ponder on and even ask me the question of, like, what do I feel that the problem is and the solution, if you haven't grasped what the solution is after explaining, giving you some key tips and key concepts. And we're going to discuss, like, how do we take steps forward, moving forward post-pandemic in an experiential world? Are events typically the same, or are we going to move forward with including the more immersive aspect? And then how did we get here in the past 3 years? We'll discuss, like, post-pandemic, prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic. I'm going to have our audio team play a video.
Everybody, I'm Janet Davies.
And I'm Jim Rose, and welcome to one of the most incredible places in Chicago this year. It's called Disney Quest, and it's located on the corner of Ohio and Rush in Chicago, just 1 block west of Michigan Avenue.
JR, right behind us is a 5-story building that is an indoor interactive theme park.
Ooh.
It is full of high-tech virtual reality games and gadgetry. I tell you, it is 90,000 square feet of pure fun, good family fun. And I guarantee there is no place in the United States like this, except in Orlando, where the original Disney Quest is.
Before Disney Quest Orlando opened, Disney Quest Chicago.
So, how many of you are aware of Disney Quest? No one. So, about 25 years ago, Disney Quest was originally open, of course, Orlando. So actually, it's pretty unique to hear that Disney launched a virtual experience, a property outside of Orlando or California. The virtual experience, that was my first intro of experiences. I was young, my parents took me, we seen commercials, and it was really big in Chicago. Like, we didn't have anything that major. It was 5 floors of immersive experiences. You had VR, AR, and you walk in, the elevators, it's just like, where am I at? This is like Disney World in Chicago. And it was an amazing experience for me. And it's interesting enough, like, everyone asks, well, what happened to Disney Quest if it was so successful? Of course, the technology was ahead of its time, and the low attendance because it was just so far in advance. Everyone didn't quite grasp it. But look at it now, 25 years later, we're in a virtual reality type of like realm. Prior to March 2020, only 5% of events on Eventbrite, one of the biggest ticket websites in the world, were virtual. But by the end of 2020, the company would help power more than 1 million virtual events, lectures, and guided tours. That's from Julia Hartz, the CEO and co-founder of Eventbrite. Within the last 5 years, pre-pandemic, the standard events with the purpose of a social gathering. Prior to, as stated, it was just a typical networking, everyone come together, and it wasn't any like major takeaways from it. You had the team building, you had the holiday parties, you had the corporate happy hours that your team forced you to go to and you felt bad if you didn't attend. And during the pandemic, we transitioned to live virtual Zoom, IG Live, remember the IG Live experiences, and other social platform-based events. The social distant and limited attended celebrations that also occurred. I'm a victim of being a bridesmaid during the pandemic for 2 weddings. That was fun. And post-pandemic, you had the immersive and innovative experiences that you see. There's so many different experiences that is occurring where you have brand collaborations, the integration of bringing on creative directors and art directors for companies such as the NBA, such as Polaroid. You have these creatives in these spaces where you will be surprised, and I have had feedback prior to where saying like, well, is there a creative aspect, a part of this company? And majority would say no. And now that they're implementing a lot of creativity, you see a lot of more immersive experiences. So what was the shifting moment? And I ask you guys, it's a crowd participation. What do you feel was the shifting moment during the pandemic to shift us with where we are right now? Anyone? Exactly. I feel that we were all just tired of being in the house and locked up. We wanted to have that more physical interaction. I feel that we came to our course with these Zoom calls. I feel that it was like mentioning Zoom to meet up was becoming a nightmare to a lot. So that was a great answer, that we did want to get out. We did want physical connection. I feel that also a point is that a lot of people were locked in. They did a lot of research in regards to, all right, well, how can I take things to the next level? Because things are different now. We now have the virtual aspect. As stated, the Eventbrite 5% of people were curating virtual events. And now that they are, how can we shift and have in-person events while still incorporating virtual experiences? Similar to the summit today. Hello to everyone virtual. So the success to building successful events, of course, is a pass-along story. I had a friend he attended a Nike event, and his experience was that I wanted to attend it. I heard about it, and from his experience, he was advising to me like, hey, it wasn't a great experience. It wasn't the best. And I said, oh, well, I think I don't want to go to it then if you've had a bad experience. Compared to someone else, I went to Art Basel in this past December, and a friend stated to me, hey, the Meta event, it was like the metaverse. You were just walking into it. It was just super immersive. And I actually was like, okay, I have to be a part of that moment. So the number one key for a successful experience is definitely having that storyteller, that person that can go back and say to their friends, their families, their colleagues, like, hey, you should attend this event because of this reason, and conveying the message that they received. Number two, I will state it will be the irresistible factor. What is the wow factor? What can you walk away, what can you implement to have your audience walk away and say, wow, like, that was phenomenal. I want to attend all of their events. That's definitely a key. Delivery and tone is just as significant as context. It's sometimes, you know the saying, it's not what you say, but how you say it. So definitely the delivery and the setup and the tone of the curated production is definitely a key aspect. And emotion, what do you want your audience to feel? Do you want them to walk away stating, hey, I want this to be something where I can persuade and inform my colleagues, my circle, or is it an emotion where I want them to feel like entertained? Like, what emotion do you want your audience to feel? That's something to definitely factor into when you want to have a successful experience. The recipe, another is solution experience design. Immersive experiences, I keep saying it over and over again. VR, AR, just 3D. You have 3D printed designs and models. I went to an event in New York, the Louis Vuitton event. They had 200 trunks, and all of the trunks were opening and played music, and it's just an immersive experience. I walked away stating, like, I want to follow up with who designed, who curated, who produced. Like, I want to know all of these things. And everything is designable. It's a designable surface. These tables in the front, you can curate and you can design it. You can put your company logos on there. You can have a spotlight beaming down. It's so many things that can be designed. Creatives are on the radar. I can't express enough how you should incorporate creatives. They are definitely here to do what they love to do. And I feel that in the past, companies didn't actually bring on the creatives. It was just the analytical thinking, logistics, and now that the creatives are being brought on, you see a lot of brand collaborations. Tiffany and Nike is a great example. You want to definitely join your audience and feel a part of the community as well. I feel that community-based activities, community-based experiences is definitely the key to success. When you are connected with your community and you know exactly what's going on within your community, you cannot fail in that regard because you always have that backing. Another point is style and purpose. That goes back to the delivery and tone as well. Your style and your purpose is thinking thoroughly, what concept can we implement? How can we keep it consistent? How can we change it up, but still have a solid base and a sense of autonomy? I actually curated art gallery shows during the pandemic. And one key was the fact that we allowed the audience to control their time. So we had time slots where it was a 6 to 9 p.m. event. We had slots for 6 to 7 p.m. if they wanted to attend, 7 to 8. And it was very successful. The events, they sold out because they were allowed to join the event when they had the time to and not force the 8 to 10, oh, I have to get there by 8, and if I can, I have to get there by 9. It's only going to be an hour. I'm going to miss networking. So I feel the time slots is definitely another key for successful experiences. These are for a couple examples. I stayed at the Louis Vuitton, I love that, in New York. The NFT, that was not last year, but the year before, right after the pandemic, Miami Art Basel did an entire, everyone exhibitions was NFT based. And then you have the Area 15 immersive experiences. It's a lot of experiences that's like similar to that. Art galleries, corporate events as well. Like you stated in the front, the Bill Gates Breakthrough Energy experience that was in Seattle in October, where you had an art installation at the Pulse event, and you had the art installation at Pier 66, and how it all integrated together where it was an entire experience. We had our audience attend the Pier 66 event and transferred over to the Pulse party. So it was just, everything was cohesive. So recap, understanding of how we have transitioned from events to experiences. That's key number one to how we can move forward. Number two is apply the right tools and strategy for your next experience, and stand ahead of the curve, stand creative, developing creative resources, and stand connected within the community. In conclusion, you are the creator of your own narrative, allowing us to collectively proceed with moving from events to experiences. That's a quote by me. Continue to create, continue to thrive, and continue to be the best and incorporate your community. Thank you. And I'll open it up for a Q&A. That's a great question. Me personally, I love creating for a more intimate group because I feel that that level of intimacy, we're all able to connect, we're all able to get to know each other. I definitely curated smaller experiences where it was a group of 50 people, 35 to 50 people, they didn't know each other at all. And by the end of the event, they became friends and besties and networked and were able to collaborate with each other. So I actually love those events much more because it's much more intimate. You walk away with a solid relationship.
Yeah, just a little bit about your kind of creative process and, figuring out what it is that, getting that information out to present.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me, I can just start with, it's just based on the project that I'm working on. Let's just state that I receive a project and it's stated Seattle, for example. Just really reaching out, learning about Seattle, one. Learning of the creatives that's within Seattle. How can we reach out? What is needed in Seattle? I know producing an event for Breakthrough Energy in October, I didn't know anyone. Seattle, it was my second time visiting Seattle. So for me, it's resourcing out, learning about the arts, learning about the culture, learning about the history. I feel that's important because you can apply that to the creative process as well. And reaching out and seeing who wants to help, who wants to volunteer, that's the community aspect as well. And it was successful by bringing on locals from Seattle to assist with the event, in addition to implementing having our own team and building that solid relationship. And actually, that's a great question I want to steer it to. That's how I met Stuart, the founder of this show, from that event. So that's a part of my creative process.
What would you say for when you feel like you're struggling with reaching a certain age demographic?
That's a
That
great
20 to 40-year-olds, I feel, is really hard to get to come out to these immersive experiences.
Yeah. And you stated the age group 20 through 40? Yeah, 20 through 40, that's a difficult group because you have your Gen Z, you have your millennials, and then it's like millennial going into Gen X. So it's like researching, one. Of course, Gen Z, they want to be out and about. Millennials, they want more informative type of events. And then Gen X, they just want to network and be around and just share experiences. So really breaking it down and asking feedback. Having connections, for me, Gen Zs, I love hanging with Gen Zs because you get to know and stay ahead of the curve. You know what's new. TikTok, it's not my thing, but it has become a thing. It's forced down our throats. So now, present day, we have to learn the tools, the strategies, and all of these things so we can implement it in our events. So I would say, to answer your question, that definitely researching, connecting, and outreaching, just asking questions and feedback and applying it to curating your experiences.
Thanks for your time this morning. I'm with a membership-based nonprofit, and our CEO has put the mandate on now for more networking events.
Yes.
And I find those really tedious and not very exciting, even when I attend them. So how do you make these smaller events experiences while still keeping them networking-ish?
Yeah, definitely. It comes down to food. That's my favorite thing. Food. We did one small event, we did nitrogen ice cream. And that was something like, oh, I never had this before. This is super cool. Another intimate event, we did an olfactory, like smelling fragrances. We kept it still an experience, but we also further elaborated on networking. Like, how does this apply? You want to know more about olfactory. We both here. What do you do? How can I further connect with you? How can we collaborate on additional events? So I would state just approaching it not as like, oh, this is just network basis. I just want to get this and this and that, but actually forming those meaningful relationships. I feel that has been at ease when having these smaller events. Hi.
Speaking of Gen X, how do you tailor immersive events for the Gen Xers who might be a little technophobic? I've been to things now where there's no printed program. There are no business cards. It's all on your phone, and some of us aren't real
comfortable with that.
Yeah, my mom is like this morning, she's like, I can't log in for the virtual. I don't understand it. And she's Gen X. So I definitely get where you're coming from. Informative, that's where it comes in, just being overly transparent and walking them through. It's kind of like holding the Gen X's hands. Like, you have to hold their hand, walk them through the entire experience, and making sure that they're well aware and understanding of it. I know, for example, we did an immersive experience. This is right before the pandemic happened, like literally weeks before. And we did a Time Magazine exhibition in Chicago, and it was a virtual reality experience on the March of Washington, Martin Luther King. And everyone was like, what is this? I don't understand. What is VR? What are these things? But we were very informative and overly transparent in regards to, all right, this is how you use it. Here's instructions. And not just targeting them, but for everyone, just so they won't feel like outsiders, like, oh, wow, like, they get it, I don't get it. So making it feel more cohesive in that way, but very informative, relaying the instructions, and really just, like, trying to have an understanding of, okay, this is where we're going, what don't you understand, and just to help you have a better understanding as well. I hope I answered. Any other questions?
Any more questions?
Hi. Hi. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you engage with production partners and vendors as you go into different cities, or if you just bring along the whole crew.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm working on a few productions right now where we have to connect with local production crews and have our own production crew. So for me, I just go from U Seattle, for example. We literally produce based in Chicago, and we reached out to Seattle locals, and we all just got on the same page. It was a lot of like the intro, we laid out what we want to accomplish, the goals, the specifics, what do we want to walk away from after the event, post-event. That was one. Then two, we went through a creative process where it was many calls on brainstorming, just like hours of just throwing things out there. Like, first thing to come to your mind, what do you think, should we implement this? From collaborating with a Seattle local production as well, we're able to understand the arts and culture better because it's completely different from Chicago. So having those conversations was very helpful and insightful in regards to bringing everything together. And then a third is definitely, you know, when we were visiting and doing site visits and everything, the physical connection. I can't express that enough, like making it feel more personal and intimate and having those relationships with other teams, just making it feel like a more family type of thing versus just work, if that makes sense. More questions?
Maybe I can talk about a microphone.
Yes.
So a lot of events that we're producing, that we're seeing a lot more of, are community festivals. And they're all very like, you get the vendors, you get like stage performers, and that's pretty much it. How can you make a community festival more of an immersive experience?
Ooh, that's a great question. You can definitely make it an immersive experience. Is it virtual? You have a virtual access?
What I'm currently working on is a Cinco de Mayo.
Ooh, that sounds nice. Okay.
And it's been going on for 36 years, but we want to bring it to that 20 to 40 audience that doesn't want to go out and do these community festivals. We want to make it more inclusive to all ages.
I'm sorry, the streamers can't hear you at all.
Oh.
Should I re-ask my question? I think, yeah, re-ask your question and explain your festival.
Okay. So how do you make a community festival more immersive? It's very cut and dry. Like, you get the vendors, you get the musicians, and that's pretty much how a community festival goes. But how do you make it a more immersive experience?
Yeah, so I feel like you kind of like threw it out there to vendors, right? Let's just start there. What vendors are you bringing on? Are they providing immersive experiences down to like catering? They can provide immersive like food experiences. That's one thing, or music, or you can have 3D printing vendors there that make models. That's something that is like immersive that people can walk away from like, oh, I didn't know that this can happen. So I definitely would say like the vendors is number one. Another, virtual. If you have virtual access, it reaches a different type of audience versus your in-person audience as well. And I would state like really outreach, using your resources on the West Coast, like networking here at this show, Portland, of course, and outreaching to seeing if you could connect with the connections that you have in LA, asking questions and getting more advice and feedback in regards to how things can be more immersive.
All right, I'm going to use the microphone because we need to be able to, as we are presenting this virtually, have our virtual audience also be able to hear you.
Awesome.
What are one of the more difficult experiences that you've had to put together, and how did you go about finding the solutions to what we're even talking about today, just making it more inclusive and immersive with your target audience?
Ooh, that's a great question. So one of the most difficult experiences for me was definitely the Fox upfront. It's different because it was the first year back since the pandemic. So for that, and it was in it was originally 4 cities, New York, Chicago, Detroit, and Los Angeles. And I led produced Chicago, Detroit, and Los Angeles. And 3 weeks before the actual upfronts, Detroit was removed. So that was pretty interesting because we went to different venues and went to select to see caterers, brought on vendors and all of those things, and then it was cut. In addition to that, Chicago, the location wasn't satisfactory for the client. So my key when dealing with those situations is being overly transparent with the client, overly transparent with the team, and seeing how we can all reach a solution cohesively. For me, the way that we were able to problem solve, and I feel that as a producer, as an event planner, normally you have to be the problem solver. That's just what it is. And for me, I feel that it was a smooth transition for me being a publicist and going on to being a producer, because publicists were problem solvers. So for me, I would definitely state that the over-transparency, just that communication, and us coming together to find solutions is the way that I was able to navigate through those challenges. Thank you.
One more.
Hi.
So there's a virtual audience here.
Yes.
And of course, we thought we were done with hybrid events, but many of us introverts, we like to stay home. How are ways that you can make the virtual experience more immersive at a live event?
Ooh, I have so many ideas in regards to that. I'll share a few. I feel that, like, I'm so over, I feel that you guys can agree, like, just logging into Zoom and just seeing, like, people's faces and things of that nature. Like, why can't we become, like, in a metaverse and be 3D characters? I think that would be pretty cool for us to do, like, for virtual experiences. Incorporating that 3D aspect, I can't express that enough. I feel that will be phenomenal, a different change for us, especially that's where we're heading. In addition to that, making it more interactive. Like, I remember, I'm such an internet baby, going back to the AOL chat room days where you could just hop around. I feel like that for virtual experiences, it would be ideal if you're having a summit, everyone can just hop around in different chat rooms and communicate and network in that way. So that's a couple of ideas that I have, just making it more interactive and making it more networking based instead of like, oh, we're chatting, logging in, asking questions. How can we network with the other attendees that are virtual as well? So, of course. Alrighty.
Any more questions?
Any more questions? No?
Well, Adrina, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone so much for all your questions. I see everyone taking notes. Thank you. I'll be around. If you have any questions, you want to talk to me one-on-one, I am here. I am available. I appreciate your time, and enjoy the show.